Pamela.
There you
Hey,
go.
everybody. I'm Pamela, and I'm an alcoholic. And this is amazing because there's so many people in these squares. I always tease Mary Margaret. She's my sister-in-law because Derek's my little brother. And I always want her to, like, when he goes to talk, to go put the mute because he always wins the thumper stumper. You know what I'm saying? I need to unplug his computer or something like that. We have a fellowship of the spirit. I heard Chris R. in Texas. I mean, in Florida. I came down when he spoke at a conference in Florida. I see Charlotte, what, 3 or 4 times a week. I have a sponsee on here. I quote Eric in that acceptance thing almost daily. We find or we create the fellowship we crave. And I've been given that because I didn't crave anything except for Jack Daniels and a hot guy. And once after the Jack Daniels started kicking in, I didn't want the hot guy. I'm an alcoholic, and I'm an alcoholic who's given 2 lives in one lifetime, or 2 lifetimes. Or, hey, I'm here, and my life is way different than it used to be and the way that it should be. And it's only through God's grace and mercy that it is. Um, I'm going to do a little house cleaning, they call it, or housekeeping. I have a sobriety date. It's June 15, 2016. If I make it to June, I will get in the double digit club. I have a home group. And I have been going to Never Too Early workshop and I still like it. But my new sponsor's like, that's a workshop, Pam. You need an AA meeting. And my home group is Southern Pacific. And it's started by Hank and Linda. They came out of California. They patterned it after the Pacific group because that's where they both got sober. Hank has gone to the big meeting in the sky. Linda has 44 years. And we bought that book life on Tuesday nights. And if you bring a topic, it's got to come out of the 12 and 12 or conference approved material. On Thursdays, we have two 15-minute speakers and a main speaker. Because what I have found is the longer I stay here, the more I need the Tylers, the Chris, the Tony Z's, the Erics, people that practice AA. And like if I get to it or if God shakes it out, this new AA teacher that I have that talks about Founders AA. I've been going to Russell's meetings. I need it like they did it when they got there. And I've been under the impression that I was just taught this, that the first meeting, Dr. Bob stuck his foot up on a stool and opened up Sermon on the Mount. I'm an alcoholic. I'm a real alcoholic. And my solution is found in building a relationship with the God of my understanding and maybe my misunderstanding. Um, and that relationship will allow me to recover from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. It will allow me to build a relationship with this God that will solve my problem. And you're looking at my problem and will give me what I've always been misdirected from. And that's my real purpose. My real purpose is to be of maximum service to God and others. If you're new and I'm like, God, just keep coming, just understand that this is a process. I've had people that have had to work. Because when I got here, I used to say I'm a recovering Catholic, but I just went back to Catholicism. There was a God and he had 10 commandments and I had busted 8 of them wide open. So I didn't want to hear nothing about no God, thou shalt not, and I had shout. So when I got here, well, first and foremost, I have a home group, Southern Pacific. I have a sobriety date, June 15, 2016. I have a sponsor who has a sponsor who has a sponsor. I have a plethora of women and men, but women that it's funny because when Eric said no cussing, one of my closest, I call her my grand sponsor emeritus, is a woman named Francine W. And I wish you would cuss in front of her, much less the meeting that she's in, much unless she heard that you thought you might be wanting to cuss. Because I have women around me that with dignity and grace, we don't roll like that anymore. I'm no longer a booty short, tube top, Salem cigarette, wake up with the bartender type of chick. And if I'm talking sobriety and I'm talking this book, and there's another book that says fresh water and salt water can't come out the same stream. So how am I moving in life these days? And that is what I needed a sponsor for. That's what I needed a program for. That's what I needed a relationship with God for. So what makes me alcoholic? I've never felt quite right in my own skin. Irritable, restless, and discontent. And we look for the ease and comfort we get at once. And we see others drinking with impunity or immunity. Um, I needed something. I just could not stay in my own skin. And when I found that beverage alcohol, I could finally breathe because I was wound up. I remember one time I went to see a psychic before my life was different. She said, "You're like one of those little mechanical dolls." I just could not function in life. And in that not functioning life started really early in my life. I'm the youngest of three. My eldest brother came home from the Vietnam War addicted to opiates. My second oldest brother, I took him to his first meeting. Um, he's does what he does. He said, God's my sponsor, and I go to church, and that's fine for him. I wouldn't trade places with him with all the tea in China, because not only am I sober, but I get to be happy, joyous, and free. And then there's me. My mother was married twice. So there's a big, huge age gap between the younger of my older brothers and myself. So in that age gap, by the time I was 5, they were gone. So we're from a small town outside of Pittsburgh called Canonsburg. And Canonsburg was a melting pot. Canonsburg was born in 1960, 65. Excuse me. Canonsburg was part of this burgeoning mill town. People came from literally around the world to work in the steel mills. So my best friends across the street were the Mistakos, and friends down the street were the Zarneckis. And they're like second generation or first generation people that had come to this country to work. And it was pretty idyllic until it wasn't, but it was pretty cool. I played kickball on the street, hide and seek, all that kind of stuff. Now, um, this is not what makes me alcoholic. It makes me thirsty a little bit. There was some inappropriate behavior in my home from the men in my family. Um, my mother is diagnosed by a licensed psychologist as a narcissist with sociopathic tendencies. So when I would say somebody's hurting me, she said, no, no, no. You have an overactive imagination, because nobody was going to mess up her little perfect world that she had. And in deference to this ain't bash mommy time. My grandmother was nothing nice, and her mother died when she was 2. So my mother clearly couldn't transmit something that she didn't have, but she had something. And unfortunately, that was the thing that got transmitted. So back to Canonsburg. We're living in Canonsburg. Life is good. Things are moving quiet right along. And my parents played cards with another couple. And, we're in Milltown. So they had beer. I used to go sip everybody's beer. They thought it was so cute. And I would pass out because we lived in a shotgun. I'd pass out in the dining room on the floor. Oh, just put her in the bed. But I'm what, 6, 7? And I remember I looked forward to Fridays. I didn't know, I knew it was Fridays. I couldn't wait because I got to sip everybody's beer. Now, I didn't know it was alcoholism. I didn't say, oh, okay, I'm an alcoholic. Let me go to a meeting and get a chip. I just knew that there was something in that glass that made me feel really good and warm and special. Now, being that I was 6 or 7, I really couldn't, saddle up to the bar. So, as my parents got a different education, as they began to change their lives and stuff, we moved to Pittsburgh. Now, my mother was an English teacher in Canonsburg. So I've always had this vernacular. I've always had this skin tone. I've always talked like this. I've always had this cadence. And that was fine in Canonsburg. Like I said, there were people literally from around the world. But I moved to Pittsburgh and we in the hood, and I saw this a lot of times. You think you talk like you don't fit here. And then those are the people that supposedly look like me, and the people that didn't look like me, they were like, yeah, okay, go over there. So I learned fear very quickly. I learned how to run home. So I learned this other thing. It's called fighting, and that worked out a little bit better. But like I said, my mother was not equipped to deal with certain kind of things, and she had a certain level of delusion. So whenever I would have a problem, she would just change my school. I went to 10 schools in 12 years. Um, and I still have trouble connecting today. I'm working on it. I have a sponsor. I got, some outside help, as I get moved in these different environments, I develop different skills. I would turn into whatever was required. I still got this gnawing inside of me, this irritable, restless discontent, but I know how to shift. And now I've got to maneuver at school. I've got to maneuver at home because from the outside, as my parents made more money, we look like the Huxtables. And on the inside, we were the Addams family. And I always say, including that little hand thing running around, And I'm trying to navigate all these things. Plus, I'm an alcoholic. It ain't easy, y'all. So I was at my ninth school. I don't know. I told you I'm 65. I was 15. I think it was a sophomore, ninth or 10th school. I can't remember. And but I do remember this day. Um, it was these two girls, my nemesis. I can remember their names, not because of what they did to me, but because of this day. There was a short one and a tall one. And I'm sitting on the side of the hill. And I told you I learned this other thing that helped off a lot better. So you'd say, yo, new girl. Oh boy, here we go. Getting ready to post up. I'm like, okay, I got to take this big one out. I got one shot. I got to crack her dome the first, because if I miss, I'm dead. I could take the little one out next, but I got to take this big one out, right? So I come down the hill and they're like, yo, you want some of this? And it was a bottle of wild Irish rose. I said, okay, now I told you I'd had the beer when I was little. And I had, my dad was a bar drinker and he was a heavy drinker because when they told him he had diabetes, he stopped immediately. And he would take me to the bar and I'd get potato chips, which I'm still addicted to this day, and those pickled sausages. And I would sit and he would get me a Shirley Temple with the cherries in it. And I remember like the beer garden, that's what they called it. You would open the door and it'd be real cool and dark in there, and I loved it, and I would get little sips of stuff like, you don't feel good, they give you a Jack Daniels with some honey and lemon. I was always sick as soon as I could be. Um, I had those little nips of stuff, but I didn't until I had this day. So they said, you want wild Irish shows? You want some of this? I said, yeah. So I turned it up. And I want to say I did, I know I did half. I want to say more like three quarters. And I could tell you where I was standing. I could tell you who was standing next to me. I could tell you who was standing on this side. I could tell you what I had on. I could tell you that moment today with as much clarity as I had on the day that it occurred. And when I put that magic elixir in my body, the sky got bluer, the clouds got whiter, that screaming that was always here, you're not enough, you a hoe. Because when you tell somebody that somebody's touching you and you're eight and that you did something, of course you did something, um, nobody loves you, you're dirty, you're damaged, all these things that are screaming in my head now go down to this. And it's a nice hum. And I get this warm feeling. And I really feel like I'm part of the world at last. I get this, it's okay. And I chased that until June 15th, 2016. I would love to tell you I realized I was an alcoholic. I immediately went to a meeting and I began to recover. Not so. Now, I told you that my mother had some mental illness, but my mother from the outside, she was a dean of students of a college. My dad was a mediator for the Justice Department. His boss's boss is now a Supreme Court justice. We lived in a certain house. They drove a certain car, but they still brought the alcoholism with them. So from the outside, I told you we looked a certain way, but on the inside, we weren't. And my mother, due to her mental illness, I always say this, I don't know if it's true. If she could have kept us in cages in the basement, she probably would have, but she was too high profile. So we were objects that she took out at certain times when she was getting an award. And why that's important is I would have on a $200 sweater, but I didn't know how to shave underneath my arms. My hygiene is still something I have to be aware of because it didn't matter. My hair, I would have on a great outfit, my hair was unkempt. I didn't have the basic living skills. And again, she didn't have it to give me. She figured some things out on her own, but not greatly. So I go to we used to have this antiquated thing called Career Day back in high school. And I remember, drinking, but not having access. So, I'd go to a party and I was always the one that got drunk and threw up, and people would be like, oh my God. And, they turn my shirt inside out and take me home. And my parents were detached. They wouldn't, if I came in with my head on fire, they wouldn't have known. So, now it's time to get ready to graduate from college and from high school. I'm like, what am I going to do? Now, I'm not a genius, but I'm not the dullest knife in the drawer. I had gotten a scholarship. Should have graduated in 78. I graduated in 77. And I got a full scholarship to a prestigious university in Pittsburgh. Well, I drank my way out of there straight away. And this career day thing, this girl had come and she had this really fascinating career. And I sort of, liked it and I thought that would be interesting. So I said, I think I want to do that. And I applied and I did. And I've been that for about 40 years now, 43 to be exact. So that meant I went from Pittsburgh to the big city. Now, Pittsburgh is a lovely town. It's a great place to, have friendly neighbors and all that kind of stuff. But I moved to Washington, D.C. So we're talking about being in a loving, wonderful environment that's, cobblestone streets and pierogies and Permani Brothers and the Steelers to Washington, D.C., the Thunderdome. Now, I've moved down there. I've gone from no living skills. I didn't even know how to drive when I got hired. I didn't know how to turn on a washing machine. So I moved to DC and I moved in. My roommate was Miss Tampa. She had been Miss Florida, whatever. So we're these two halfway decent looking chicks. We're in the big city. Um, and we don't know what to do, but we're getting business cards. So every time we would go to work, we get these business cards and we're broke. So we come home and put the business cards in a fishbowl. And on Fridays, we would pick out somebody and let them take us out to get something to eat. So I take the card out and I call this guy and he says, yeah, yeah. So he takes me to the Watergate Hotel. Now, the Watergate Hotel at this point in time is a big, beautiful glass bar with mirrors and all the pretty bottles and stuff. And he's taking me to dinner. I went to the Watergate Hotel later on in life for other reasons, but at this point in time, it's just to have dinner. So he says, would you like to order a cocktail? I said, yeah. I said, I'll have a Boilermaker. See, my brothers worked in the mill, and that's all I ever saw them drink. And he was like, yeah. And for those of you who don't know what a Boilermaker is, you take a shot of whiskey, you drop it down in a beer, and you drink it down. He said, why don't you order a single or double malt scotch? And let's do that. And I did, and I drank that for a long time. Now, my drinking, now I have the access. Now I have the opportunity. My job has copious amounts of alcohol that are free. That's free. Well, no, you could steal it. Nobody cared. And now it's off to the races. Now I will tell you this. I'm an alcoholic. Period. Point blank. It begins with alcohol and it ends with alcohol. There might be some things in the middle that enhance my alcohol, but I'm an alcoholic. So I started drinking alcoholically. So now, at this point in time, I'm modeling. I've learned how to take care of myself a little bit better. And I'm going places and I'm doing things. And when I got hired, I was 5'10" and about 125, maybe 20 pounds, 120 pounds. I'm old, so I'm shrinking. I'm 5'9", and I'm damn near 200 pounds. So can you imagine? I'm like this, and I look like the girls in the magazines, right? Well, I get a hold of some stuff and we're doing some stuff, and to maintain that weight, I got to take some stuff. And I go down from 120 to about 95, maybe 100 pounds. And I look great in my clothes. I'm getting jobs and booked and all that stuff. And my mother comes down to DC on business and she said, "Oh, no, there is something wrong with you. You're coming home." And I have the kind of job I could live anywhere in the world that I want to, just as long as I'm in position to do what I need to do. So I go back to Pittsburgh. And guess who I take with me? Me. Oh my goodness. And I know how to navigate those cobblestone streets. I can make some stuff happen. So I get back to Pittsburgh and I'm doing some stuff. I'm hanging out with these two girls, and we used to call ourselves the Unholy Trinity because we all modeled, we all flew around, we all had, and we're popular. You know, I did the Steeler fashion show. I was doing some stuff. I'm living, I'm moving, I'm grooving, and that alcohol is flowing. And now I guess they got a new one, Ciroc, or I don't know what they do nowadays. But back then it was Dom Perignon. And I'm like, yeah, okay, give me some of that soda water if you want to, but I'm getting it in. We're in VIP, stuff's happening, and guess what? I'm crashing and burning. Um, my last days of involving myself in those activities was November 21st, 1995. Because we're sitting around, and at this point in time, we're not doing anything except drinking. And as we are locked in this, we could go anywhere, do anything, we ain't moving. Well, the one girl starts manifesting and thinking she's turning into something. And we're like, okay. So she says, we're going to go to a meeting. Now, I told you my brother came home from the Vietnam War addicted to opiates. And so when he comes home, he goes to these places, these resorts, he goes to jail. Okay. And when he comes out of jail, he goes to these meetings and he picks up these tags. So I had been there. And I said, she ain't never gonna make it. Because her family were doctors and lawyers and Indian chiefs, and she really talked like this. Well, we go to an AA meeting. There's a bunch of old men sitting around reading to the wives. Then we go to another fellowship meeting. And these little brothers done came out the penitentiary, and they got them 8 packs, and they got the cigarettes rolled up in their sleeve, and they throwing dice. And I was like, I have found my tribe. So I hung out there off and on for 20 years. Now, she was able to stay there and just celebrated 30 years because she's an addict. It's addiction and alcohol. I ain't here to argue. I'm just here to tell you my experience. And my experience is I'm an alcoholic. I have an allergy in my body. I got an illness in my mind, and I have a spiritual malady. And you think I know this book. I know the other book pretty well too. I told you I was over there for 20 years. There's obsession, compulsion, and total self-centeredness. And the total self-centeredness allows me to become other-centered is the solution. There's one solution up in here for me, and that's God. I have to build a relationship with the God of my understanding. So I get over there and I get almost 10 years and I drink. And then I go do something else. Then I get a couple years and I drink, go do something else. Then this last time, my last date was 9909. I get almost 7 years and I drink. See, alcohol ain't no drug for me. Alcohol was alcohol. And I was not giving up that. See, I could give up that other stuff because, see, I had to do degrading debauchery to get it. But I told you I have free access to my job, and I'm not an alcoholic. Of course I'm not. I'm not standing underneath the bridge with a raincoat on and my pocket. And I'm doing some other stuff, but I would never, ever give up alcohol because I love it. It's the only way I'm going to keep from blowing my brains out. I couldn't even possibly think about it. Who can have a Caesar salad without a glass of Chardonnay? I haven't had a Caesar salad or a Chardonnay since 1982, but let's not take that into consideration. So I'm dancing in and out there because I don't have a solution. See, we have 3 pertinent ideas. We're powerless over alcohol, and our lives have become unmanageable. or it's not even and, our lives are unmanageable. Probably, and my sponsor hates it probably. She said, I hate the probably. No human power could relieve my alcoholism, but God could and would if he were sought. Be convinced. Then we have step three. Well, that other fellowship has three disturbing realizations. A disturbing realization is different from a pertinent idea. We admitted we were powerless over our addiction, obsession, compulsion, until that our lives were unmanageable. I think, let me, then the next line says, although we are not responsible for our disease, we are responsible for our recovery. The next line says, we can no longer blame people, places, and things for our addiction. We must face our problems and our feelings. The next line says, the ultimate weapon for recovery is the recovering addict. See, I needed big, I needed more. Because if that recovering addict decides to go out and get high, that recovering addict decides to drink, no human power. And like Russell says, in Emotional Sobriety, The New Frontier, Bill came out and said, yo, I not all that. I think I might need to rethink this thing. It was my dependency on this and my dependency on that and my dependency that did not allow me to totally depend on God. And that's why I didn't have the power to continue to stay away from beverage alcohol. So on June 14th, 2016, I'm at that other fellowship's convention, and I'm the midday speaker, and I'm standing at the podium. The messages and the promise is freedom. Any can stop using, lose the desire to use, and find a new way to live. Look around. You're a miracle. I was drunk as Cootie Brown that night. See, I hadn't had any transformation. I'm still tagging somebody's husband. I'm still stealing stuff off my job. But I'm being told, don't take that first one. No, you don't take that first one. It's good. Burn the house down, kick the dog, beat your wife, rob the bank, but don't take no dope. You'll be all right. That doesn't work for me. Now, there's people, that girl that I went to the meeting with, she just celebrated 30 years because she's an addict. And she's able to do what she needs to do with, I have to have total dependence on. So, June 14th, at that thing, June 14th, that night, I'm drunk as Cootie Brown. So I need to enhance it because I've been sort of sneaking and drinking anyway. So I call my ex, and my ex is a 6'4", blonde hair, blue eyed, Chris Hemsworth, tattooed, pierced earrings, sexy machine from Asheville, North Carolina. And he had gone out with 12 years in that other fellowship. And he was the only person I knew here in Charlotte, because I told you I'm from Pittsburgh, that did what I like to do and got down like I like to get down. But he shot dope. He shot heroin and coke or something. So I call him up. I'm like, yo, you want to have a drink? He's like, yeah. So he comes over to where I'm at and he's drinking. He's getting all sloppy. I was like, oh, no, 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 no. We've got to get something. So I drive a Terrain, and I told you I'm about 200 pounds. And he's 6'4". We get in this Terrain and we're going up here in the cut because I never got anything here. And I'm like, yo, what's up? And they're like, not you, cop. So we're like, okay. So we drive 40 minutes out. He calls this dude. We get out there and he doesn't have what I need. We drive 40 minutes back in. I drop him off and I go to the bar till I pass out. And when I get to the bar and I passed out in a hotel, I wake up the next day. Now, see, I've been coming to your little stinky meetings because I was in that other fellowship, and he and nobody was really excited because I moved down here and I'm a hot flight attendant and I get with white guy and the people over there. But it was like, no, I'm in the South. I'm in Charlotte. Okay. They're giving me the stank guy and they're giving him the stank guy. So unfortunately, I went to work one day and I come home and he's like, because we're living together, we're engaged. And he goes, yeah, there was a new girl and nobody would help her. So I let her come here and take a shower. I'm like, oh, how nice. I scratched his face. I punched him. I threw his crap all over the front lawn and I moved in. And I moved to a hotel. So He subsequently, I think he was 51 at the time. She was 21 at the time. She's cute though, cute little girl. So um, he goes back to doing what he does. Call him. I wake up the next morning, and unfortunately for him, by doing what he does, and I could say all this because it's I have his permission sort of. He's gets hepatitis C. So I wake up the next morning, I'm like, not only did I sleep with my ex that I know has hep C, I almost did something else. I'm going to go to a meeting. And like I said, I have been coming to your meetings because I was embarrassed because he leaves my old 52-year-old behind for this 21 hot blonde. So I started coming to your meetings and I'm listening. I got topics. Do anybody got a topic? I do. Relationships. The old timers like, if somebody doesn't get this girl, because see, I'm bringing my language. They're both romance languages. They're both Latin based, but I'm bringing Spanish in the French meeting. So, yeah, I want to talk about how I feel. They're like, we don't care how you feel. You got a book? So, um, I've been coming in and out of your little meetings, listening to your little stuff. So I went to a meeting on June 15th, 2016. I walked in, and this woman that hated me, she hated me. I hated her too. She looked at me and said, well, why do you think you drink? And I said, well, I'm dating a married man, and I just don't know. She looked at me like the RCA dog. If you don't know who that is, ask your sponsor because she old and she knows who it is. And I said, I flipping MF and hate my MF and flipping BA parents. And I hope those rotten flipping MFers rot in hell. And she said, good, now we can get somewhere. I'm like, well, say I'm a good little Catholic girl and you don't talk that way about your parents. And she said, do you have your book? I said, book. She said, oh, I should have known you don't have one by the way you share, but I have mine. She took me in the back room at 709 East Boulevard, right down the street. She opened her book to page 66 and she read the resentment prayer and I haven't had a drink since. She took me through the steps. And you know what? I usually talk about how I went through the steps, but since the plethora of profound Zoom clowns, I'm one, have come in. See, Chris has been doing this long before Zoom. Eric's been doing this long. Tony's been sober long before Zoom. They just didn't, in COVID, stumble across a book and become a book teacher, you know? And there's a lot of that out there. Are you doing the work? Well, first of all, you gotta be an alcoholic and you might want to live a little bit of the program, you know? So I usually go through the steps, but I'm going to talk about the principles tonight. The steps are a set of principles that are spiritual in nature that allow the user to become happily and usefully whole. And those principles can't be replicated, duplicated, or pretended through. See, I had to come here in the first step and surrender. I had to surrender that I didn't know. And Russell just talked about this on Saturday, the difference between surrender, that initial thing, and submission. That's a whole different ball game. Okay. But I surrendered in that first step and I accepted. I didn't just admit, oh, everybody could admit that I was alcoholic by the foolishness I was doing, but I accepted deep down in my innermost self that I'm an alcoholic and I got honest about my drinking. So in that second step, I got some hope. I got some hope because I came to a meeting and I saw people that I had got down with that was doing stuff that I used to do that wasn't. And guess what? They were laughing from the inside. They looked me in my eye and they said, how are you? And it wasn't like how much money you got. They looked me in my eye and said, how are you? And they really meant it. So I got a hope that I too can be different. And I got some faith because I saw as I got a home group, as I picked up chips, as I took good early direction from a sponsor, that my life began to change. I didn't hit the Powerball and get a Bentley, but I began to feel okay, just a little bit in my own skin. So in that third step, I made a commitment and I got some dependence upon this God. I didn't know how it was going to work out, but I made a commitment to it because I showed up and I did take that good early direction and I did get a commitment to make the coffee and I did get a commitment. I've cleaned toilets at that very club that woman took me back there and read that book to me. And in fourth step, I got some courage to look at me. I was real good at looking at you. I got that down on lock. But I had to get the courage to see who I really was. And I'm not a bad person. I got a bad disease. And I'm here to tell you, since I've been sober, I ain't screwed nobody's husband. I ain't stole no liquor off the airplane. I've done none of those things. I ain't stole no mascara from the. Okay, that mascara is about $13. Maybe I did. One of them did fall in my purse from now and again. Thank goodness for 6 and 7. I admitted to God, to myself, and I got the art of confession. I unburdened my soul because I had the integrity, that spiritual principle, the fifth step, to own up to who I really am. I got the willingness in the sixth step to be different. The original manuscript says, it doesn't say entirely ready. The original manuscript says in the sixth step, entirely willing. I'm always ready to go on a diet. I means I got to put that cake down. Oh, I'm not willing to do that. So in that seventh step, I humbly on my knees, that's what the original manuscript says, go before my God and ask him to remove my shortcomings. This is me, just my get down. My character defect is the defect in my character. The shortcoming is acting out on that defect. And I humbly ask God, yeah, I want to punch her in her face. She looking at me. Yeah. I don't do that because I have brotherly love in that eighth step. And I look at where I was wrong and I'm willing to just look at it. I ain't got to go say nothing. I'm sorry. Yeah, you are sorry. So I need to amend my behavior. And in that ninth step, I begin to act like I have a God. 3 is I begin to. 5, I admit to him. 7, I ask him to help me. 9, I act like he working in my life because I got sober feet. And do I get it perfect? No. Thank God for the 10th step because I have perseverance to keep trying. When I fall down and bust my behind, I dust it off and get back in the game. And in that 11th step, I have that God consciousness. The original manuscript does not say we sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God. It says our contact with God. Because I have a God and I have contact with him. And we're improving that contact. Asking for what? For knowledge of his will for me. And guess what? The power. I didn't have any power in that first step. By the time I get to the 11th step, I got power. I got God power. So guess what? I have the power to carry out not my will, because my will is I should be married to Michael Jordan living on a lake. His will to what? To carry this message and practice these principles. And people say, oh, it's all about service. I'm serving. It says love in service or love and service. Because faith without works is dead, but works without God is ego. I didn't do anything except bring my dusty, raggedy, drunk behind up in here. And it's through God's grace and mercy, he laid out a path. He laid out a treasure map, which I've heard you old timers say, that leads me to the treasure. And being able to find that treasure is what the steps are all about. The steps are a love walk. So what's it like today? Today, I quit speaking for about a year or so because I was sleeping with a newcomer. Um, I I met him in Zoom. He's been coming since 2000. And so I said, well, he's been coming since 2000. And Francine W. says, I don't care if he's been coming since the beginning of time. Has he been through all 12 steps? And is he taking another man through the 12 steps? I was like, no, ma'am. I said, the most time he's ever had is 6 months. So you slept with a long-term newcomer. You're not going to like this, but that's not a good look for you, Pamela. And trust me, if you're thinking about it, don't do it because it's painful. Is it painful? Oh, my goodness. So I quit speaking for about a year because I was a hot mess. So it's been about 2 years. Maybe I can't remember, but I did the work. My sponsor she got a 3-page, 10-step inventory. I done wrote inventories on him. I done lit candles at church. I finally did all the work. And it's the best way I knew how to get over one was underneath another one with a bottle of Jack Daniels in my hand. I didn't do that. So Tuesday night, I'm at 2 Tuesdays ago, I'm at Southern Pacific, and there's 6'3" nice looking guys in there. And I didn't do not I'm like this. And I said to my girlfriend, who is that? She says, I don't know. He's been coming. And I was like, okay. Don't television, telephone, tell an alcoholic. I come in next week. She's sitting next to him. She said, I introduced you to my friend. I was like, I'm gonna kill her. So this Tuesday we had coffee afterwards. Have not kissed him, not touched him, not done anything. I did hold his hand, and you know how I held his hand? Because I stood next to him at the end of the meeting when we did the Lord's Prayer. I'm a different woman today. I've been transformed by the renewing of my mind, which means in AA talk, I've had a psychic change because I have women like Mary Margaret that hold my hand. I have women like Tyler that say you should. I have women like Francine. I have women in my life that say, Pam, that's not a good look for you. You deserve so much better. They walk with me, and we don't talk always about our nail color. We talk about God because we love God. So I still have the same job. I'm still doing the same thing, but I'm not the same woman. I have had a psychic change. I am relatively happy, joyous, and free. And I have a new teacher. I've been going to hang out with Russell. He does a workshop on Saturdays, and he calls it Founders AA. Is that right, Derek? Founders AA. And we do it like they did it. You know, we talk. He brings another book, the big book, and he puts the big book next to it, and he chops that thing. Russell's a beast. So I'm having a new experience. I'm going to another lady named Arisa's big book study at 9 o'clock in the morning. Isn't she amazing? I see Mary Margaret there because they're taking me deeper. They're developing this relationship bigger. They're taking me places. I did Tyler and Chris our BBA. I did that. I've turned the statements into questions. I have continual people in my life that show me how to live this thing. They don't just quote pages, oh, I've got a new employer. Well, it sure don't look like it because your show ain't acting like it. They show me. I get to hear them. I get to see them. I get to see it play out in front of me. Um, I want to tell you, and I am happy, joyous, and free. But guess what I am? I'm okay in my own skin. I feel all right. I don't look at the ceiling anymore and say, oh my God, whose ceiling is this? And there's something breathing next to me. I hope it's human. And then it went from, oh, I know I'm here, but I don't want to live anymore, God. I can't do this. It's too hard. It's too painful. To this is the day the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. Let me jump on that 7 a.m. meeting that Russell has. Let me jump on that 10 a.m. meeting. Let me jump on here. And in that, I get a power to live. This book is called A Design for Living. And I truly am living today. I was surviving when I got here, but today I'm living. I was running late. I was coming flying in here because I have a sponsee who has a sponsee who took her to an in-person meeting. She picked her up. I was going to meet her. I went to that meeting to meet her, to say, welcome to our family. We got you, sis. And why is that important? Because this you don't want to miss. It's a fellowship and a program. They're co-relational, codependent, and you got to have both. I got to have somebody tell me, yo, nah, and say, well done. You cleaned all the coffee cups. Now get those chairs. I need that. And in needing that, guess what I get from coming here? I'm going to always close with the literature. You don't want to miss this because life will take on new meaning. To watch people recover, I want to go see that little girl grow up in here, see them help others, to watch loneliness vanish, to see a fellowship grow up about you, to have a host of friends. I'm looking at you. This is an experience you must, and that's one of the few must in here, you must not miss. We know you'll not want to miss it. Frequent contact with newcomers and with each other is the bright spot of our lives. Thank you for being the bright spot of my life. Thank you for letting me share.